Is going to allow us to take a break on this particular plot without losing the weed battle and without having to go out there and constantly weed this plot. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Friday, July 26th here in South Georgia, and on today's video we're going to talk about what to do when you need a little summer break from your backyard garden. Now, I realize some of you folks up north may be thinking, break? Heck, I'm just getting started harvesting stuff. But us here in the deep south, we need a little bit of a break this time of year because it's so brutally hot out here and there's not a whole lot we can grow right now. And we've still got another couple months before we can do any cool season planting, and we're going to be pretty much gardening all winter long. So right now is a good time to take that break, but we need something to kind of hold us over to keep our garden plots from being just overgrown with weeds while we're taking this little break. So I've got this 30 by 35 plot here where we had our onions growing earlier this year, and this is just a beautiful canvas that we're going to paint today as we give this plot a little bit of a break. Now, I could have done what we're going to do today a month or two ago, but I'm just now getting around to it, and I think my timing's going to work out better doing it right now. So after we pulled up those onions, this plot was just kind of bare for a month or two. I would wheel hoe it every, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks just to keep the weeds from getting way out of control on me, just keeping things manageable. And to get this plot ready to plant a cover crop, which is what we're going to be doing today if you haven't figured that out already, I didn't use a tiller. It may look like it's been tilled, but it hasn't. So before I got this plot in the shape it's in now, earlier today, I didn't have a lot of weeds out there, but I did have some purslane out there. And one thing I don't like doing is tilling purslane into the soil because it just seems to spread it even more. So I took the wheel hoe with a little stirrup hoe blade and kind of cut all the weeds, raked those out of there. And then I took another wheel hoe with the cultivator teeth and just kind of mix things up a little bit so I can get some good seed to soil contact when we plant this cover crop in a minute. So the cover crop that we're going to plant today is going to allow us to take a break on this particular plot without losing the weed battle and without having to go out there and constantly weed this plot every few weeks to keep from losing that weed battle. Now, in many of our older videos, we've detailed all the great benefits of cover crops. I won't go into those in a lot of detail on this video, but at the end of this video, I'll refer you to a video where you can learn more about that. But just briefly, some of the benefits that we get from cover crops: obviously weed suppression, which is what we're talking about a lot today, erosion control, nutrient scavenging, nitrogen fixation, adding organic matter to your soils, and then grazing as well, because we'll be using this to feed our chickens in the chicken tractor back there. Now, when we start talking about cover crops, we always get a ton of questions from people asking, how do I know which cover crop to grow, and how do I know when is the right time to plant it? And the answer to both of those questions can be found if you ask yourself, how much time do you have? How much time do you have before you're going to want to plant more vegetables in that plot? Or how much time do you have before you're going to get some freezing temperatures that would kill a warm season cover crop like we're going to be planting today? So this time of year, in the middle of summer, we plant warm season cover crops, and then in October we'll plant cool season cover crops that will grow throughout the winter down here. We don't want to plant any cool season cover crops right now, one, because a lot of those things won't germinate in this hot soil. I can't get clover to germinate right now, and a lot of those would go to seed way too fast right now. I could plant some rapeseed or some turnips or something right now, may get them to germinate, but they're going to go to seed way too fast before I get the bang for my buck out of those cover crops. So warm season cover crops planted now, and then cool season cover crops planted in the fall. That's our game plan every year. Now, the warm season cover crops that we plant this time of year, we've got a couple options. We can terminate those when we need to plant that plot again, maybe with some cool season veggies come October, or we can just let them grow all the way until our first frost and let the frost kill them. So there's lots of different options, lots of different ways to do this. You just got to think about how much time you have, how wide is that window before maybe you want to plant some fall veggies or cool season veggies in that plot, or before the frost would kill a warm season cover crop. You wouldn't want to plant a warm season cover crop a month or so before you're going to get your first frost, because you're not going to get a whole lot of growth out of it in that short time. And then as far as the varieties of the different types of cover crop seeds you can plant, obviously a lot of options out there, and I'm not going to go through every single option, but I highly recommend going on the Green Cover Seed website. I didn't get the cover crop seeds we're planting today from them, but I do get a lot from them from time to time. They have a wealth of information on their website as far as the benefits of each cover crop and how it could help out your garden. But I'll caution you, you do have to be a little bit careful with the information you take in from their website, because keep in mind, they're in the Midwest. I have purchased some of their warm season cover crops before that don't really do well down here. I think one of them was called safflower, and it just never took off. So some of the things they recommend for warm season don't necessarily do that great here in the Deep South. But I will go through a few that do well down here. Just depends on how much time you have, as I mentioned earlier. We're going to be planting some sorghum sedan grass today and some iron clay peas. I really like both of those. I use those, or that combination, more than anything else in the warm season for a cover crop, because I get a nice long window there before they go to seed and I need to terminate it. They also work good grazing with my chickens. They seem to like to eat it pretty well. I don't really care for buckwheat, which a lot of people use as a warm season cover crop. It's way too fast for me. It goes to seed in 3 to 4 weeks down here in the middle of the summer, and I'm wanting a longer window than that. And I don't really plant millet anymore for the same reason. It doesn't go to seed quite as fast as buckwheat does, but it goes to seed faster than I want it to. And then you've got sun hemp, which is a really good option if you've got some heavy equipment. That stuff is really, really fibrous, and it's hard to mow with just your average residential lawnmower. You really need a bush hog to take that stuff down, and I don't have one. That's why I don't really grow sun hemp anymore. So let me show you what we got in our box here. I actually got all this stuff from Hancock Seed, which is a company out of Florida. I believe I've ordered from them before, and they usually have pretty good seed. So we've got our sorghum sedan grass right here. This is a variety called Sweet 6 BMR. It's supposed to be good for forage, and since we're going to let our chickens eat a lot of this, I went with this particular variety. But there are several different varieties of sorghum sedan grass out there. Then we've got our iron clay peas here. A lot of the deer hunters around here will plant this for food plots. I've also used a red ripper pea before. Those work good in conjunction with the sorghum sedan grass. I always like to try to plant some kind of pea with that sorghum sedan grass if I can. And then lastly, we've got our inoculant here, which we'll need to treat those peas before we start throwing them out there. Now, most of the time when you purchase cover crop seed, they will have a seeding rate on the bag there. I recommend going higher than that seeding rate, especially if you're doing this in a backyard garden and your goal is weed suppression. Now, if you're planting a food plot on a big field, that seeding rate may work well. But in a backyard garden where we're trying to suppress weeds, we want this stuff planted really, really thick. So I've got a 5-pound bag of sorghum sedan grass and a 5-pound bag of iron clay peas with a 30 by 35 plot to work with. Now, I have in the past did a whole 10-pound of this and a whole 10-pound of peas, but I think that may be a little too much. So today I'm going to go 2.5 pounds sorghum sedan grass, 2.5 pounds iron clay peas. I like to plant mine really, really thick because we're going to be grazing it with the chickens. I need it to be thick enough to hold up to some grazing. I don't want it to be all patchy after the chickens run over it just one time. Now, before we strow some seed, we need to inoculate these peas so they can fix their own nitrogen and add some nitrogen to the soil. So to do this, we just start out with a little bit of water in our bucket here, not a whole lot. I'm going to go ahead and put about half of this 5-pound bag of peas, so just about half this bag in there. Maybe a little more. Should be pretty good. Then we'll take our inoculant, which is just kind of this black powdery stuff. This bag here is enough for 50 pounds of seed, so I don't need a whole lot of it. for just 2.5 pounds. I don't measure it, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of that in there. And then we'll just take it, mix it around, make a little slurry there. Make sure all our seeds get coated. Then we'll add our sorghum sedan grass to the mix. This stuff doesn't need to be inoculated, but it's not going to hurt it to be in the same bucket with those peas that have been inoculated. So about half that bag right there. We'll get all those mixed together. That way when we throw the seed, we're throwing relatively equal amounts of peas and sorghum sedan grass. Alright, that's what we're putting out today. We're ready to go. And so now I just take my bucket and kind of walk up and down this plot the long way. Throw that seed, make sure I try to get it as evenly coated as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. And after less than a minute of throwing seed, my bucket is empty, and hopefully you can see all those little seeds scattered out there on that soil. So now we just need to cover those seeds a little bit. We'll use our landscape rake here. You don't have to have a rake this big, it just makes it a little faster. And so what I'll do is just drag this behind me along this plot here, up and down until I get it all covered with the rake. I'll walk beside it, not right behind it, because I don't want footprints everywhere. Just get it nice and smooth. And so that takes about 5 minutes, just lightly dragging that rake up and down the plot. You can see we got it nice and smooth, no footprints. Now you also may notice that just dragging it with a rake like that won't get every single seed covered with soil. You will have some seeds still sitting on top of the soil there, but that's all right. With ample water, we'll get those to germinate just fine. And even though it's supposed to rain the next few days, I'm going to go ahead and get some overhead water on this plot here. I like to go ahead and soak it in. That way if we get some really heavy rains, it's not going to wash everything away. So I'll go ahead and soak it down with the overhead sprinkler, kind of get everything packed down there just in case we get some really hard rain. And if we weren't expecting any rain, what I would do was give this about 2 hours of overhead water every day for the next 3 or 4 days. When it's as hot as it is out here right now, usually we can get this stuff up and going, germinated in about 3 or 4 days, sometimes sooner than that. So we want to water it heavily in the beginning, get some really good germination, and then we can kind of slowly back off the water as this stuff starts growing. And once those peas get well established in there, or that sorghum sedan grass gets about, I don't know, 18, 24 inches tall, that's when I'll pull my chicken tractor on this plot and let the chickens start working on it. So if you've gotten worn out and tired from the garden this summer, don't let the weeds win while you need to take a little bit of a break. Invest a little bit of money in some cover crop seed, get that planted. It only takes a few minutes to plant it, and you can just kind of set it and forget it, maybe give it a little water every now and then, and when you do get ready to plant it again, you won't have to worry about a ton of weeds out there or a ton of weed seeds that have been added to your soil that you're going to have to fight in future years. And if you want to hear me go in more detail about all the wonderful benefits of cover crops, watch this video right here where we'll kind of break down each benefit specifically and tell you what it can do for your garden. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.